To finish up this last little bit about the lymphatic system before I get into the immunity portion of this section. So we've talked a lot about lymph nodes, and I just wanted to include this little bit about Peyer's patches. Are lymph nodules, kind of like tonsils, not encapsulated, not as complex as a lymph node, but still found within the small intestine to help as that kind of like that first line of defense against pathogens that might be present in the things that we consume. Now, as far as lymphoid organs are concerned, we have the tonsils that are found in the pharynx. As we breathe in air and we drink and eat, there can be pathogens found within there, and they can become trapped within the tonsils. We have a thymus, which is the place where T lymphocytes go to mature, develop their T cell receptors, and become immunocompetent. Then we have the spleen, and we'll talk about the functions of the spleen shortly. There's the Peyer's patches, and then the appendix is also chock full of lymphocytes and is another place where we can mount a defense against things that might get into our bodies by breaching the epithelium that we find throughout the digestive tract. So the spleen is in the abdominal cavity, tucked behind the stomach on the left side of your body. We primarily find B cell proliferation there. We find some T cells, but as our blood is being defended against by by our lymphocytes against any pathogens that might be present, the B cells then will aggregate, because we will typically have extracellular pathogens in our bloodstream, not viruses and not cancer cells. And so B cells are the lymphocytes that will target those extracellular pathogens that may gain entry into the bloodstream. So they will be there in the white pulp of the spleen, which we'll look at in just a second, in surveying the blood for these pathogens. The spleen in the red pulp is very, very vascular, and we have sinuses within the spleen to trap and remove any defective red blood cells and platelets. Red blood cells, because they are anucleate, cannot repair themselves when they become damaged, and they'll only live about 120 days or so, and after that time they will be removed from circulation, and new red blood cells will take their place from the bone marrow. And so that in the spleen is where that's going to take place. Any other debris that might be in the bloodstream, foreign matter, bacteria, viruses, toxins, any stuff that's there will be removed by or into the spleen. Also is going to store the recyclable products from blood breakdown, namely the iron that we would find in a heme molecule, and then the rest of it would go back into the bloodstream and then go to the liver and be eliminated in the bile. And it is the red blood cell production in the fetus, some of the red blood cell production, because as a fetus, we're going to learn that the fetal skeleton is made out of hyaline cartilage, and there's no bone marrow in that. And so there isn't a place for formed elements to be made. So the spleen and the liver will help take care of that. And then it'll also store platelets. And this is just what the spleen looks like. So here you can see how vascular. We have these sinuses in here. And then we have the white pulp here. And then this is the red pulp where the blood cells are going to be extracted from. In the white pulp, here you can see these are clusters of B cells, lymphocytes. And like it says right here, the white pulp, a lymphoid tissue with many lymphocytes, is surrounded by red pulp containing abundant erythrocytes. majority of those erythrocytes will be, I shouldn't say a majority, many of those erythrocytes will be ones that are being extracted from the bloodstream to be replaced by the bone marrow, cells from the bone marrow. Okay, the thymus I'll talk more about in the next video when we talk about T cells and how they become T cells. And it's found in the mediastinum of the chest, and does not last into adulthood. By the time you're in your 20s, any maturation of T cells will have happened at that point in your life, and so the thymus will start to be absorbed into your body, apoptosis, and it'll become fibrous tissue. In my 30 plus years of being in anatomy and physiology, I've seen many cadavers, and I've never seen a thymus in an adult cadaver that I've dissected, but I have seen them in fetal specimens. And if you have the opportunity to see an adult cadaver, you're not going to see a thymus at all. And this is what it looks like. Okay, tonsils you're probably familiar with. We have 3 sets of tonsils. Pharyngeal are the ones that are up in your nasal cavity, up in the nasal pharynx. We also call them the adenoids. We have the palatine tonsils. Those are in the oral pharynx. Those are the ones that you can see when you open your mouth. And then we have a lingual tonsil that's found in the back of your tongue. That lingual tonsil provides kind of a landmark when an individual is being intubated. So the lingual tonsil and the epiglottis, so the individual doing the intubation knows where to insert the tube, that they have it going down into the trachea and not down into the esophagus. And here's what they look like. You can see we have these crypts where material will become trapped, and then these germinal centers will have lymphocyte tissue or cells within it to help fight off stuff that may be trapped in there. And if you have to have your tonsils out, then it's typically because your tonsils have joined the other side. They let the strep bacteria grow in them and provide a breeding ground for the strep bacteria, and they don't do their fighting anymore. And I find it interesting, 50, 60 years ago, it was the thing that you did when you were a child and you had sore throats, was to get your tonsils out. And then we came to the 70s and we had all these antibiotics, and we just, that was the magic pill. And so that fought strep for about 30 years, a good 25 years. And then because the antibiotics were prescribed for problems that were viral and therefore did not affect the infection, and because people wouldn't take them properly, they wouldn't finish a complete course of antibiotics, start to feel better. Why don't I take these pills anymore? As you know, now we've created just armies of antibiotic resistant bacteria. And so now it's come full circle. We come back to, hey, we're going to take your tonsils out. And I'm seeing a lot more of students, friends of mine. I have a friend right now who just got her tonsils out, and she's miserable. She's closer to my age, and being an older adult and getting your tonsils out is the worst thing ever. So hopefully you won't have tonsil issues in your life. But that's why we've gone back to taking tonsils out again, is because the antibiotics don't work anymore, and now the germs just grow in the tonsils. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and then we'll get into specific immunity. We'll talk about immunity altogether, non-specific and specific immunity.